Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Scheifele, and I am an urban designer and planner at San Francisco's Office of Community Investment and Infrastructure, otherwise known as OCII. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the fourth and final Transbay Park Community Meeting. We can start the program slide now. Perfect. The program for this meeting will include brief introductions from OCII and the San Francisco Recreation and Parks Department. Then the design teams from the Public Works Department will present an overview of the park concept design to date with an update on the park program. They will also outline several design alternatives for the children's play area and the Stewardship Building, for which we are gathering your public input. We look forward to the public feedback during the Q&A portion of this presentation, as well as through an online survey that will be distributed to you. And we will wrap up this evening by summarizing next steps in the park planning process. Next slide. The Transbay Block 3 Park Project is a collaborative effort between OCII and the Recreation and Parks and Public Works Departments, and we're joined this evening by representatives from each team. As the successor agency to the San Francisco Redevelopment Agency, OCII has jurisdiction over the Transbay redevelopment project area. The Transbay redevelopment plan governs land uses for this area, and the plan stipulates that Block 3 will become a public open space. As the project sponsor, OCII is guiding the design process along with Recreation and Parks, who is slated to become the eventual owner and operator of the park. The Public Works Department, with their landscape architecture and design capacity, comprises the design and project management team from schematic design through construction. Next slide. So tonight we'll follow a webinar format, and in any portion during the meeting, you may ask questions or provide feedback in the Q&A. We'll address as many questions as possible during the 30-minute Q&A session at the end. Any questions we can't get to, we will collate and respond to in writing and post on the Public Works Community Meeting webpage. And following the webinar, you'll receive a pop-up link to a survey that seeks to gather your input on the program alternatives presented here. You can fill out this survey at any point at your convenience during the next 2 weeks. And you'll also have access to this presentation, and graphic references are within the survey to remind you of the design alternatives presented this evening. So you don't need to take notes or remember every single detail. Next slide. And we now just have a quick little poll regarding attendance at the last community meeting. So we welcome your input, and we'll go over the results in 1 minute. All right, next slide. In the meantime, this slide here describes the design and planning process. The park design is informed by 3 key components: community feedback, sustainable design, and site-specific inspiration. And this is the 4th and final community meeting in the project timeline. The next steps are to finalize the schematic design and present the park plans to the Rec and Parks and OCII commissions. And I will now pass the presentation on to Monica Scott from the Recreation and Parks Department. She will speak to the operational aspects of the project.
Thank you, Laura. I'm Monica Scott, Project Manager with the San Francisco Recreation and Parks Department. As was mentioned, this parcel is currently owned by OCII, but will be acquired by the Recreation and Parks Department. This park will be owned, maintained, and permitted by RPD, like all other parks in our system. The East Cut Community Benefit District will support the success of the park by providing complementary services such as park monitoring, security patrols, assistance in the development of park programming, and the deployment of movable furniture. RPD is playing a critical role in the development and design of this park, and we are confident that the end result will meet our high standards. I'll now pass it off to Lizzie Hirsch, Project Lead for the Public Works Design Team.
Thank you, Monica and Laura. Yes, so I do think we need the poll results. Did we get it? So of this group here tonight, only 35% attended the community meeting 3 and 65% did not. Okay, so this is very helpful because it gives me a sense of how much I have to go into detail. So I'll go over the basic parameters of the process. Here, I'm trying to move. Okay, whoops, sorry. So just to give everyone a quick overview of the process and what has been going on in the last 3 community meetings. Just first of all, the site itself is within the East Cut neighborhood, within the Transbay development area. And this is a zoom into our site. It consists of a big block that's going to be broken up into 3 parcels. Our block is block 3. And we'll get into the details of that later. So as you all know, the terminal site itself is set within this very dense urban context. And as a way to frame our own park, we first started to look at what surrounds it. So block 3 is right here at the center. Just within 10 minutes is Rincon Park, which is a grassy knoll park. Sales Fork Park is an elevated park with lots of program opportunities. And then the future Under Ramp Park, which is a big active exercise, and we'll have also amenities as well in that park. So here's an axon view to give you a sense of the scale of the buildings around. So in diving deeper into the terminal site, it's broken up into 3 adjacent, 3 parcels, block 4, block 3, and block 2. And what is key to understand in this slide is how the open space interlinks from one block to another. As you can see in our design, we very much acknowledge these links, and you can go from block 4 to then block 2. Each one is at a slightly different phase in development, and if you have further questions, we can go into that later. So just a brief overview of our process. We started out with an initial 3 different design concepts that were quite distinct and different to generate feedback. By community 3, we did present the idea based on the clearing, and then I'll go into what came out of the clearing. The clearing, as its name itself suggests, is this notion of an open space that is broken around this framed, very densely vegetated edge with programs framing this, this center space. You can see that it has connections to the 2 blocks. It is this idea of a place, a respite from the urban zone. And we'll start going into some more details, visuals later on. So just in terms of at community 3, we did want to check in, about how they felt about the clearing, and we did get a huge response. 223 people responded to this survey. Not too many attended the meeting itself or prior meetings. But the great thing is 94% who responded to the survey did live in the neighborhood, and then a 68% worked in the neighborhood. And we have both dog owners and parents that are about 25%, and we got a nice distribution of ages. So overall, if you look at, we did ask at the end of the community 3, did you favor this direction? And overwhelmingly, we did get a yes, 64%, 28% of no opinion, and then we got an 8% of no. So we felt pretty confident moving forward. So just to get a closer look into the main portion of the clearing, you can see we have this circular circulation that gets you through the park with a meadow in, sort of at the center, with a deck at the top for gathering, lots of gathering spaces along the pathways for individual gatherings, a lower deck for within the meadow, and then this area that is kind of a plaza zone right between the 2 blocks, block 4 and block 2, as a kind of flexible space. And this is from the upper deck looking west. So you see the lower deck in the meadow with some seating along there. And in the distance, you can see the Stewardship Building, which anchors the edge on Beale that we'll talk more about as we progress. And then the playground location here at the corner, not yet determined. So just as a starting point, we wanted to give you a little bit of an update on the Main Street edge and to give you another kind of reference point. You know, as we studied the program area for the park itself, you know, 3 key things: daycare, childcare centers abound in this neighborhood. So therefore really making the children's playground key. Additionally, there are some dog areas within the 10-minute walking distance, as well as a future one at Under Ramp Park. And lastly, there are also 2 restrooms within the 10-minute area, one on the Embarcadero and one at Salesforce. So we're gonna, oops, sorry. So we're gonna talk about this Main Street edge here. And then what was represented at the last meeting is on the top section here, and this is our update. So 3 key components changed. Number 1 is the removal of the prefabricated restroom that is part of an overall program in the city called DECO. We have subsequently learned that they no longer have additional DECOs as part of the contract. The contract is only for replacing existing DECO restrooms. So we don't have any formal way to incorporate a prefabricated restroom on the right of way, which was the preferred decision in the community. And then secondly, you can see this pathway has changed. It was once a meandering pathway. But as we study this with our disability access coordinator, you have to consider people that are blind, wheelchairs. So there is a regulation that this actually has to be a straight shot between block to block. And then the last shift is the flipping of the dog area that was once on the street edge. We flipped it to the park edge. For a number of reasons, but the main reason is really to make it a little more protected for dog owners and create this nice big buffer of landscape on the street edge. So these are examples of what that would feel like: big sort of vegetated landscape basins with trees, and then a potential, you know, we haven't actually gotten into the material of this, but this notion of a tucked away dog relief zone. So now I'm going to hand it over to Ioana Goodwin, who will go over the details of the Stewardship Building, which she can share.
Thanks, Lizzie. Hi. So today we'll be showing 2 design schemes with you. Both are in the same general location. So it's along Beale Street in the Grove, amongst other trees, with the playground to the east of the building and an area for movable tables and chairs just to the west. This is a rendering from the last meeting. And what it shows here, this is from the corner of Tahama and Beale looking into the park. And here you can see the location of the Stewardship Building poking out on the right side. During the last community meeting, we took a poll to have a general idea of your preferences. Overall, we found that a lasting structure that draws neighbors to the park, illuminates from within, and that can store furniture and maintenance materials was desired. The 3 images on the top of the page were those that received the most votes. We used these results to further explore form and material. Option 1 is called envelope. Envelope is a prismatic form offset within the grove. The structure responds to new architectural forms nearby. We are considering the use of a perforated skin, perhaps aluminum, on the exterior that illuminates from within. The precedent for the form was the salt shed in New York City, which is made up of precast concrete with light shining onto the form to exaggerate the folds of the building. The structure we're proposing contains a maintenance storage area for the Recreation and Park Department, as well as an area for the community storage. This can hold tables, chairs, a projection screen, and audio-visual equipment. The doors to the community storage area fold in, so when the equipment is brought out, the community can utilize this space inside as well. This is a daytime rendering of this structure looking west onto Beale Street. The map in the upper right corner is where this view is taken from, and this is going to be consistent in the next few views as well. And here's an idea of what the evening view would look like, also looking west onto Beale Street. Now we'll look at option 2. This is called bow, as in the bow of a ship. This is taking note of some of the maritime history of the site. Bow is an organic form that frames views to each corner and its central location within the grove. It replicates some of the curves from the site design and is integrated with the landscape. We are considering a more earthy material for the skin, whether it be rammed earth shown here, core 10, or a bronze finish. Form inspiration was taken by some of Zaha Hadid's projects. The program is the same as option 1, with the maintenance storage area for Rec and Park, a community area that doubles as a space when emptied out and opens out to the park. Both of these options are also 300 square feet. Here's also a view looking west onto Beale Street. This is taken in the exact same location as the previous option. And as you're walking around the building, here's a view looking south onto Beale Street. And here's the night view. We're still studying, what the perforations of the exterior could be, whether there would be more light coming in from the form itself, and we'd love to hear your comments on that. This is a side-by-side comparison of the two options that I just went over. Note that these are not the final design renderings, but we're still in the conceptual phase. So your voting in the poll tonight will give us more direction as we proceed into the next design phase. These are two design themes that will be explored, and we'll still need to further study the final form, perforations, material, etc. And we'll adjust these based on the results and your comments tonight. And finally, we'd like to go through a short fly through of both options. So this is option 1, envelop, and the doors opening. This is option 2, bow. The doors opening as well. I'm gonna just fly through this one more time in case you missed it. It's a quick video. So option 1. And option 2. Okay, and from here, I will hand it back over to Lizzie.
Thank you, Ioana. Okay. Let's see if we can, great, okay. again, in community meeting 3, this is the location of the playground. We never actually went into depth of the playground other than sort of the general location and size. So as part of community 3, we wanted to really gather more information and feedback from the community before we actually made assumptions. So the first thing was to try to determine what age group we should address. So we asked about school age, play, toddler age 0 to 5, and then a combined play. So this is a 38 square foot playground footprint. And you can see, as far as the results from the community meeting, we got very clearly 74% voted for a combined age play. This is an example of that. At South Park, it's actually smaller than our footprint slightly, so we have a little more space. And again, we also wanted to hear your view of sort of the feel of these playgrounds. What did you want? And interestingly enough, so if you can look at these imageries, which we shared, from left being the highest votes to right being the lowest votes, there's an interesting pattern that emerged on both age groups, where there was an interest in this whimsical play with these whimsical creatures, and in both ages. So that was one insight we had not expected. And we also additionally went deeper into just elements of play. We asked everyone, for general structures, what did they like or drawn to? In imaginative play, what were they drawn to? And then interactive play. So again, from left to right, left being the most desired. And interestingly enough, this one at center on the left, the whale, or some kind of fish form, also garnered more than 49%, much higher than almost any other item. So again, this told us quite a bit. And then we went on a more abstract approach just to verify, again, what are people desiring in this playground? So we asked, swinging, sliding, climbing, sand play, spinning. These are all typical features in playground. And you can see the top 3 were very clearly the top 3, the most important: swinging, sliding, and climbing. There was no question. So this gave us a parameter to start designing and developing ideas for this playground. So one of our core goals of this site is really to make it reflective of the site history. Here on the right, you can see a view of the playground shown in green here at the corner of Beale, surrounded in fairly significant urban residential zone. So just that's where the playground sits. But the site itself used to be actually technically in the intertidal zone of the bay. And so we consulted actually with a science writer, actually, who did a whole book on the bay. And she consulted us and gave us some ideas about what is really most common. So from her, we learned a lot about the vegetation and the habitat. And she clarified for us the brown pelican was most unique to this bay. And then pickleweed and cordgrass are also unique to this area. So we took those as cues for our inspiration. So we're going to, similarly to what Ioana shared, we also developed 2 options. They're not fundamentally too different in terms of, we both drew from the inspiration of the bay. However, they do address the site a little bit differently. In option 1, which we call the integrated play, you can see in blue is the park level. So about 3/4 of the play is at the park level. Your entry is right at the center here. And the main features are all within this level. However, we have a elevated tower, which is about 18 feet high off the ground, that allows views back to the deck. So we'll get into more of the details of that playground. So you can see here's the blown up plan. And of the park level, the main feature is this very whimsical whimsical structure that would be a climbing structure, playful structure that would reflect the pelican eventually. This is just a placeholder for now. And then additionally, the play would be multi-user swing, teeter-totter. These are all somewhat up for you to also respond to. And then encourage sort of some picnic areas for the parents right at this level. Then at the corner is this tower structure that would be elevated for sort of older kids. And you can climb it as a kid or as a parent, go up a little path. And amongst it, we would use these reed-like structures to create sort of this wonderful environment to mimic the intertidal zone. We are, though, just to confirm, even though the feedback we got from the last meeting was to really go with this whimsical, we did feel like we wanted to give people another opportunity to weigh in and consider a different kind of simple sort of timber play structure that would reflect some of the materials we're already using at the site. So option 2, we call this the zoned play. You can see that the difference really is that a third of it is at the park level, and we are tying in to some of the deck materials that we use. So your upper deck, your lower deck, and then the playground deck. And then there is a third or 2/3 of it in this elevated about 18 inches high. And I'll now go to the detail. So looking at the plan itself, so again, your entry is here from the park. This is the park level. It combines sort of a parent picnicking zone with the smaller kids' tots that are very the play area is oriented to tots. So the wave structure, which is like a little house, and including a tot swing as well for easy monitoring of parents. And what actually sort of adds the sort of challenge or barrier is what divides these two is this kind of interesting climbing zone that is both steps as well as stepping areas for kids. So when they're not yet ready, they wouldn't move that way. But as soon as you graduated to this school age level, you would be able to climb this structure, the waterfall play that is based on the pelican, that will allow climbing and sliding, and that is actually directly aligns with block 4 alignment. And then additionally, the option of a multi-user swing. And again, we wanted to give everyone another option, you know, if in fact, folks really didn't like this idea of these whimsical creatures, then obviously we can use more traditional tower structures and slides. Now, as a side-by-side comparison, really, this distinction is really how either you integrate all ages at the park level, which option 1 does. So 3/4 of the space is dedicated to this mixed age level with then a school age at the top, at the quarter, at the elevated point. And you can see this in the sections, how that works. And then, or in the zoned play, where about a third of it is dedicated to the smaller kids in parent zone, with then this graduated step area or path area that leads you up to the school age. So yeah, that's essentially the difference. As you can see, the features are very similar. So with that, we're going to also give you a few little more options. In the multi-user swing, there are many types. So we'd like to hear from you what you're drawn to of the types. This is a saucer swing that can always handle small kids, big kids, a lot of kids. This is a rope swing that also can handle a lot of kids, a different feature that actually does relate to kind of the materiality that we're using in the site. And then there's this 3-tier swing option. We also wanted, in the survey, you'll find out or see that we also offer you to respond to how important it is to have a toddler swing. Now I'm going to actually close this session with bringing Kathleen, the project manager from Public Works, on, and she can start responding to several Q&A questions. I can see we have quite a few in the queue, and we'll pass it over to her.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much, Lizzie. That was a great, Lizzie and team, that was a beautiful presentation. And I look forward to seeing some of your questions. We have right now 66 participants. I think it's actually about 53 participants because there's about 13 panelists and hosts. I see right now we have about 8 questions. So please ask away, ask your questions, and I will request that, Lizzie from Public Works and Laura from OCII and Monica from RPD either answer the question themselves or ask one of their colleagues to answer the question. And just to remind you, all of the question and answers will be on our website, along with this presentation, the video, as well as the slide. At the end of this presentation, a survey will pop up, and we also will have the survey again on our Public Works website for this project. So with that, I'm going to start with asking Lizzie a question regarding the playground. And there's a question, if you could explain again at what age group this playground targets, and the data that was collected to determine what age to target on this playground.
So we did get a lot of feedback via the 223 respondents from the last survey. So I did go through those slides. So much of it did come from the community itself. And that's why, that's basically how we gathered it, was through the community. We are aware that there is a lot of daycares, but the daycares themselves actually do have their own required outdoor space or play space within their centers. So we were trying to address more of the residences, in fact. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
I think so, Lizzie. And then just while I have you, there was a question, if you could just give a little bit more of explanation of what a dog relief area is.
Oh, sure. So this actually came up through our community process, and actually the East Cut CBD, this was actually a recommendation from them because they have to maintain a lot of park projects. And since we weren't going to offer a dog park per se, because that takes a lot of space, their suggestion was to develop a dog relief area so that at least, and outside of the park, sorry, my video is off, outside of the park, so that at least it would alleviate some of the added maintenance that happens within the park. And so both Rec and Park and we embraced that idea. So it came from some feedback that we had gotten from the East Cut, who maintains a lot of these public spaces.
Excellent. Thank you, Lizzie. And then Ioana, I'm going to ask you a few questions. There was a question as far as the building option 1. Do you have a sense of that shape and structure from looking down from above? And I think mainly probably because it's in a grove of trees, and also just, it looks like there might, be some nuances about the roof shape that I think someone from the community is interested in finding out more about.
Yeah, we can show it like in the, was that for both options?
Well, they talked about option one, but why not go through both? That sounds good.
Okay, yeah, in the fly through, you can see it from above. So this is for option one, and then I can pause when we get to another view for option two too, so you can see that a little bit better. So here's one. And then for option two, and I'll pause at the same place too.
Thank you, Ioana.
Yeah.
And then another question is, in comparison, I know this is, we're early in the game here, but cost-wise, just in general sense, do you think that they're going to be comparable, or do you think that option one or two will be more expensive?
Yeah, we're gonna try to make them comparable in every way, including cost. Right now, it's a little hard to say option two because of its shape. If we were using the same material, would cost more, but it could be done as something that was prefabricated or something that was molded around a shape. So it really depends on the materials, the lighting, but in terms of cost, we're still aiming for them to be comparable.
Okay, and last question, and I'll come back to you with other questions, but this last question for you. If you could explain, the maintenance shed is very clear that it's going to be maintenance for, the gardeners and other staff working on the site. But if you could explain the potential use of the stewardship part of the building, the community storage area a bit more.
Sure. Yeah. So the maintenance storage, we went over. The community storage right now, the idea is that it would store tables and chairs, a projection screen, audio-visual equipment. And then if this space is getting used, you can bring all of those kind of parts and pieces out into the area in the grove. And then these doors would open up as shown in the fly through as well. And then you can utilize the space inside of it.
All right, thank you. And then if you could go to the plan that shows our site with block 2 and block 4. Laura, I have a question for you from the public. They wanted to ask more about the lower sort of more residential mid-rise dwellings along the edge of the alleyways flanking the park. And they also would like to know estimated completion dates of those buildings.
Yes, so the land use plan calls for development on either side of the park in what will be block 2 and block 4. And this is all currently the temporary Transbay terminal site. It'll be subdivided into these 3 blocks that you see. So block 2 at the south, that will be 100% affordable housing development. The lower rise townhome portion of that is located right along the edge of the park. And then at the north, block 4, that will be comprised of a tower and a mid-rise building, and with both market rate and affordable housing components. And that likewise, that project has the townhome portion sited right along the edge of the park on Tahama, so that the park will be flanked by lower rise buildings. And in terms of timing for that, I think that right now construction, we're aiming for starting construction in 2023.
And another question from the public concerns shade and shadow, sun, shade, and shadow studies from these buildings on the park.
Yes, so the land use and design documents that laid out the plan for this whole district set the massing for the building heights and bulk, and specifically designed buildings surrounding the park, specifically located the park at the south of the tallest buildings in the Transbay district in order to maximize sunlight on the park. And maybe Lizzie can speak a little bit to how the park program located certain elements in the areas that get the most daylight sun.
Oop.
It was a study, yes.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so can everyone see this slide? So we looked at all the different seasons at different hours of the day. Key to this is we actually noticed that overall, this little corner was the most consistent in the sun. So that's why we actually created the sun deck in that area. If you can see, that's generally, other than obviously in the dead of winter. And at noon, what's terrific is overall, there's a lot of sun throughout whatever season you're in. And the meadow itself gets a fair amount of sun consistently as well. So that's another consideration. And the children's play has moments of shade and sun, which is often desirable for a children's playground.
Let's see, there's a few questions about landscape features and elements. A question about benches and seating, if you could kind of review the differences that is offered there, including benches with high backs for disabled or elderly, and also, drinking fountains and things like that.
Yeah, I think this view may be the best to capture that. We do have lots of benches along this path that will all have backs to them. We'll incorporate some back elements up on the upper deck as well. There'll be a few that will not have backs at the center of the deck. And the lower deck, as of now, doesn't have a back, but there are lots of seats around here. Drinking fountain, water fountain will be part of it. We just haven't gotten to that level of detail, but we certainly will include that. And then, I don't know, actually I'll go to the plan that might, so you can see there's benches with backs all along here. This will have, the upper deck will have a back here. There'll be benches along the streets too, as well, that will all have backs along Main Street, as well as Clementina. There'll be benches as well. And then we are going to use flexible tables and chairs. That all of those will have backs as well. So you can see that in the orange icon here that you see. We imagined about, I think, 20 or 30 flexible chairs that you can actually move around wherever you want. So we imagined, in the lower deck, right here at this flexible paving zone in the grove. So
excellent.
Yep.
And Lizzie, with that meadow, you had talked about the fact that it will encourage a lot of, beautiful birds and wildlife. And actually there's someone had mentioned, just something for the team to look into, is that there's some interesting bird life that resides on the south end of the park. So we'll ask that community member to provide more information. We'll go out there and take a look too, to see what birds have come in this spring. And definitely look to encouraging that habitat to encourage them to return, which is great. Thank you, somebody, for providing that comment. And there were some other comments where people were asking whether they're going to be able to vote on the different building structures as well as the different playgrounds. And yes, I can answer that. In the survey that will pop up at the end of the meeting, you will be able to vote. There's about 14 questions, I think, all in total, and a few of them are voting questions on play elements, which type of playground, and which building option and which playground option. And if you don't answer it tonight, you can always go on our website and find that survey and answer it. We're going to keep it up for 2 weeks, so you have time. There's a few questions about the restroom, and just to reiterate, you know, the park itself, it's too small really to warrant a restroom, and we were looking into the idea of a prefab restroom along the right of way, but currently we don't have you know, a contract in place that we can, you know, jump onto. And as far as, you know, a future potential, you know, that's something that we, you know, will look into if that becomes available. But as of right now, we don't have that in place as like a citywide contract to add new prefab restrooms in the right of way, which would be maintained then by the city. We do, however, have restrooms very nearby our site. In fact, less than a block away is the Salesforce Park site with public restrooms, and Rincon also very close by. And then, you know, residents also have their homes, or if they're going into the daycare area, that's also nearby. So those are the reasons why we don't have a restroom on this site. And there was another question about the existing structures, those amazing structures out there at the temporary bus terminal, whether they'll be repurposed. And at this point, we still don't have anybody interested in those, but we're not discounting that those could be potentially, you know, something that somebody might be interested, but they're not going to be reused at our site. Let's see. Oh, sorry, there was a, Lizzie, I have a question for you. I misunderstood someone's question. They had asked, I thought they had asked about benches with high backs, but they were asking about high tables. Like, is there any opportunity for high tables in the park, which people could, you know, stand at and eat or converse, etc.?
Gosh, we haven't contemplated that. I'd like to hear a little more about that. I mean, there was a notion possibly entertaining a few high tables in the Grove areas at one point. That would be kind of a permanent casual high table. So if that's something folks really wanted, we could look into that.
Okay. And then let's see. I have a question for Rec Park. Monica, you know, there's a lot of great compliments, by the way, to the team coming in on the design. And then there's a question that I think Rec Park could best answer is when the park naming would happen.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Kathleen. I think judging from our past recent park acquisitions with Enchanka Hall over at 17th and Folsom, I believe that will probably be a couple of years out, or at least a year out. That will not happen at this stage in the immediate future, but for sure we will reach out to the list of folks that have signed up to receive updates about this project to do some community outreach around the naming of the park. I might defer to my colleague Yael Golan if you have any other knowledge of how the naming process took place for Enchanka Hall.
Yeah, so Enchanka Hall predated me, but we would typically do a community outreach process for the park renaming and would take it to our commission for approval, and that will likely happen prior to the opening of the park, not anytime soon.
Okay, thank you both. So another comment that came up is that, you know, in this small park, we don't have any courts, any sport fields or basketball courts. Lizzie, I don't know if you could pull up a plan showing where the future under ramp park project will be going. Right, thank you. So we're also working with Public Works is working with OCII on this future park, which is the under ramp park, a few blocks away. And CMG is the landscape architecture team. So in the bottom corner, you'll see there's future basketball courts there. And then this park also is going to have food and drink areas, garden areas, seating areas, and a huge dog area. And then near the dog area, what's labeled sport would be sort of like a fitness area. And then adjacent to that, games, something like, different, sorry, I'm losing the word. Maybe Lizzie, your favorite, bocce or other
Gotcha,
games.
yeah.
So that's a future park that we're also working on. That's in, it was on hold for quite a while, but that will likely resurface very quickly and in schematic design. And also we're looking forward to working on that project again. So I'm looking to see what other questions we have. Let's see. Oh, there was a question back to our project, Lizzie, or Ioana, if you could go back to our project site. There was a question about the Clementina alleyway and whether that's a crossing that we're showing in the middle. And that is, yes, that is correct. That is a mid-block raised crosswalk. And it's going to be, a great feature because right across the way, is the daycare area. And it also creates a nice throughway from the park all the way through that block 2 development onto the other side. And to note, the 2 alleys flanking the park also have raised crosswalks at the intersections at Beale and Main for both of the alleyways, which will definitely make this a very safe area for people to be crossing from the development over into the park. Let's see, we have quite a lot of nice compliments. Thank you, public, for those nice compliments. Okay, let's see, we have a question for Lizzie. Any idea what will happen to the existing palm trees or other plants situated at the site?
Yeah, so for the palm trees, we are analyzing, we have an arborist who is giving us a report on those palm trees. I don't know if you can see in this plan, if it looks suitable and if Rec Park approves this, we do have some ideas about placing a few of them right at the upper deck, in part just to give the park some immediate verticality. So it is being contemplated, but these palms will go elsewhere if they don't go on this park, as long as the arborist deems them healthy and transferable.
Thank you, Lizzie. And then there's a question concerning something that somebody read about a temporary park installation in the interim. And Laura, I think you could best address that. Laura from OCII.
Yes, so the site right now, blocks 2, 3, and 4 are all, again, part of the temporary terminal. And there are a couple existing pavilions and temporary structures on the site. I think they're mainly on block 2. And we are in the process of planning interim uses for that. So some temporary programming uses that would just be on the site for a couple of years, such as like food and drink and just temporary uses. So yeah, it'll be activated for the community during that time.
Okay, and then Laura, you did already answer questions about the timing of the other projects in construction, but if you could reiterate that, there's another question concerning schedules.
Yes, so we anticipate breaking ground on the blocks 2 and 4 development in 2023, and we hope to phase the park construction along with that, so construction is occurring at the same time. And then, I mean, I know construction is noisy, but we would have a point person for all the neighbors in case there is concerns about noise. We would have specific hours of operation that would be strictly enforced. And so again, we would provide contact information for the neighbors to voice any concerns that they would have.
Well, yep, somebody just mentioned that. They're happy that we're going to be concerned about noise levels. Let's see. There was another question as far as programming goes, and this would be a question for Rec and Park. Monica from Rec and Park, I'll let you answer this. Wondering if personal trainers will be able to operate in the park.
Yeah, I think that they would have to go through the similar process to request a permit for the space like folks do in other city parks. So they would have, I'm assuming if our permits department deems that this park has enough space to allow that would be permitted.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And then Ioana, a few questions for you. There's a question as to whether you feel option 1 or option 2 would be more anti-graffiti or graffiti
Thanks,
resistant.
yeah. We will be exploring that further in the next steps, but our goal is to make them both very graffiti resistant. So some of the tactics we use, it's some of the material choices or something that we can put over the materials, but also looking at some of the perforations will also help prevent graffiti from happening. So it'll be a combination of a few different tactics that we're going to be working closely with Rec and Park to avoid graffiti happening. Right now, I do see that option 2 looks like a beautiful blank canvas for graffitiing, but there will be texture added to this to begin to prevent that. And that'll also be part of the material choices we use that will be easy to remove graffiti or cover it up if necessary.
Okay, thank you. And question back again to Rec and Park. Are there opportunities for food vendors to set up shop temporarily in the park? Monica?
Yeah, I think, yes, similarly, that would have to go through our permits and reservations office. At this time, we're definitely not setting up a kiosk, but that could be considered as well. Similar to like what's in Golden Gate Park, or Yael can also respond to that.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in and just say some of the things that are happening right now in parks are a result of different, COVID related policies, which may or may not exist by the time this park, is fully built and open to the public. And as Monica mentioned, there is no kiosk plan for a permanent vendor. So whether or not we still have the option to allow temporary vendors, that remains to be seen. It's too far out in the future, and that will be determined by our permits and reservations team, as Monica mentioned.
And the same goes for if there was ever a permit requested for, putting up, a little market or a food truck or something on the alleyway in the loading and unloading area. We still have to, maintain fire access, etc., and accessible loading, unloading, but there could be opportunities. And I think that is it for our questions. I'm trying to see if there's anything I missed. Colleagues, I don't think I missed any other questions. I thank you all. That was a great, a lot of compliments and a lot of great questions. Let's see.
Kathleen, could I just add to the commenter who was asking about the naming opportunities, that in the survey, feel free to insert in one of the open-ended comment sections. You can put in your suggestions there if you're already excited about a name for the park. That can be entered in. I believe, Kathleen, there should be a field where it's like additional comments.
Oh yeah. And they could even just ask another question. The question becomes a comment.
Correct. Yep. That's great. Thanks.
And then I think the only question, the last question I see was about the schedule. So I think that's great that we just went to this slide. And so, as you know, we have already had 3 community meetings. This is our 4th community meeting. The design team is in what we call schematic design phase. And once we reach our 100% schematic design phase, it'll be presented to the OCII Commission. And then our team will go into what we call design development drawings, which are drawings that have a lot more detail to every element and every aspect of the park design and the alleyway design. And then we'll go into construction documents starting in January 2022. And those are the documents that we will then advertise for bid from contractors. And, you know, this is sort of their Bible to use in constructing the project, which includes all the drawings and specifications for every element of the park and the roadway, the alleyways. Oh, it looks like somebody is highlighting this feature. Thank you. I don't know if you know that you're doing that, Ioana. Thank you. And then, you know, over to the right, you'll see, you know, bullets showing our schedule. So with that, I think we can go to the next slide, which is basically our link showing where our Public Works website is. It also shows the Survey Monkey link, which will pop up at the end of this meeting. And then my phone number, my work phone number, which you can call me for any other questions. And with that, I would like to thank you all for coming out on this gorgeous night to our community meeting. And we look forward to seeing you out using our park and our new alleyway soon. So, you know, basically when we're hoping to start construction in 2023 and end construction in 2025. And we will all be excited to use this facility. So you will please answer the survey once we end the meeting, or go back to our website and answer. We look forward to getting all of your comments, and we'll post both the questions and answers, the survey, the presentation in video form and slides. So if I have missed anything, Lizzie, anything else to add? Otherwise, I'd like to say good night to everybody and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Winnie.